everyone. This is Amrita Lit, and you are listening to The Lit Life. This is the very first episode of this podcast, and I had a pretty tough time trying to decide exactly what I wanted to name it. Lit is my last name. For those of you who are familiar with my novel Chasing Kismet, you know that Amrita Lit is my name, and I know that lit has become sort of a fad of a term in the last couple of years. It usually refers to being drunk or high. I assure you that's not the kind of stuff we're going to be covering on this podcast. But it's still going to be a good time. So hopefully you guys enjoy what I have to say. My goal with this podcast is just to share my opinion on things, sound off. Anyone who's familiar with my blog, Amrita Literature, you know that I usually have pretty strong opinions about things, especially things that go down in Surrey, BC, which is my hometown where I live. So yeah, that's what you're in store for. So if you like that kind of thing, keep listening. If not, no worries. So I just want to start off by telling you all a bit about myself because most of you probably have no idea who I am. I am a 28-year-old mother and author. During my actual job, though, is I help my husband and his family with their East Indian sweet business. It's quite a far stretch from the writing world, but you got to pay the bills somehow. So, yeah, so I started writing my book about 2 years ago, and I took a long break from it once I had my son. I have a 2-year-old son, and he takes up the majority of my time these days. For anyone who's a parent, they'd understand what I mean by that. But yeah, the book, it's a little snippet into the life of what it's like to live in Surrey and just be completely absorbed by the environment. So it follows the life of an Indo-Canadian girl who's in her early 20s, and she runs into some pretty heavy stuff that unfortunately a lot of us still deal with. Things like arranged marriage, alcoholism, not her herself, but her father, he's an alcoholic, and so the story just talks about her life experiences dealing with a lot of common South Asian cultural issues. And prior to writing the book, I used to write for a couple of local Indian magazines and newspapers. I also submitted a few of my articles to the Huffington Post Canada. And the common theme throughout all of them was that I like to talk about cultural issues or issues in the Indian community that a lot of people usually just sweep under the rug. So I felt it was important to start a conversation about that kind of stuff, and rather than shy away from it or pretend that it's not happening, because that's my goal with my writing, and now hopefully with this podcast as well, is just to spark a conversation, because maybe I don't have the means to be a social advocate and get out there and stand on my soapbox and say stop doing drugs or stop domestic violence or whatever it may be, but my work, my writing, or these talks that I do or these podcasts, they might spark the mind of an individual who will go out and be that change in our community that's going to make a real concrete difference. Because unfortunately, nothing changes until you start talking about it. So it's time to start talking. And a lot of people might think, well, I don't deal with none of that, so why bother, right? The thing is, it's our heritage, it's our culture. And if you don't care about that, well, then what's your identity? I mean, we can assimilate into the Western world as much as we want, but at the end of the day, our core roots is that we all come from India. Well, I'm speaking specifically to the Indo-Canadian listeners right now. So I just want people to care. That's my main goal, and I wasn't always like this. I mean, I really didn't give two shits, excuse my language, about any of this sort of stuff until I became a mom. And I think a lot of people who have kids would agree that once you become a parent, you feel this social obligation to make the world a better place for your kids to grow up in. And anybody who lives in Surrey knows this isn't the greatest place to raise a kid, but unfortunately, due to familial obligations and just the fact of where our business is and what it is, leaving Surrey isn't really an option, and nor would I want to. I've grown quite fond of this place, even though I wasn't born here. I was born up north in Prince George. Um, I learned to love the place I used to hate with a passion. There's nothing quite like, walking down the street and being able to see Baba riding his bike with his beard blowing in the wind. I mean, there's so much just ethnic culture that fills the streets that you gotta admit, it just feels better than living in a place where you're truly a minority. I mean, I've experienced both ends of it where I have lived in towns where I am quite aware that I'm a minority and I saw my parents dealing with that kind of stuff, and it's just not a good feeling, and you'd think that kind of stuff doesn't go on, like racism, stereotypes, prejudice, all that kind of stuff, but it's still very much alive even though we're in Canada, which is supposedly super multicultural. But anyways, that's why we need more people who are ethnic minorities, and to speak up and give a voice to those who don't always feel comfortable doing so. So that's another reason I do what I do. But yeah, I believe I started off saying that I was going to tell you about my book, and then I just went into a different direction. That you can expect to experience that quite a lot with this. But yeah, so the book, it started off as a passion project. It was just going to be something for me that I never really intended to share with anyone. I had no idea it was going to blow up in the way that it has, just locally and amongst the South Asian community. I can't even tell you how amazing it feels to get so many amazing messages and just positive feedback, and it's so encouraging, and it makes me really happy that I put myself out there in the way I did, because a lot of people would agree that it's not the easiest thing always when you're an Indo-Canadian girl writing about stuff that's kind of considered taboo, especially when you're married and you're a mom. I mean, I was definitely nervous. I really had my hesitations at first, but it's been great, and I'm glad I went through with it. And I had a whole lot of encouragement. I had a lot of people rooting for me, and I'm thankful for that. But for anyone who has like something they want to do like this, whether it's write a book or start a podcast or a YouTube channel or anything, it doesn't have to be specifically something where you're in the limelight, but just something that is just yours. That's not to do with your work, but it still makes you happy, and it still requires effort, and it gives you an identity. It gives you a voice, and it gives you an edge. I think that's so important for everyone to have. It really increases your life fulfillment. I mean, we spend so much of our life just going through the motions of what we think we're supposed to do, so much of unfortunately Indian cultural influence is what you're supposed to do, what you want, your parents want you to do, and then maybe what your spouse or your in-laws want you to do. But you know what, like, life's short and you only live once, and it's such a cliche, but cliches are true, man. There's a reason that they stick around and that they still hold truth to them, even though they're tired, overused expressions. I mean, you gotta admit that if you don't start living your life now, you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna feel like all I ever do is live for everyone else and make everyone else happy, but you got to do stuff that's just for you too. And that's what this book was about. I really needed to carve out an identity for myself aside from the stuff I was doing with the family business, aside from being a mom, even though I cherish that role the most in my life. But I needed something that was just for me, and I needed something that was going to be an inspiration to other people who might have been feeling the way I was feeling, or obviously who were dealing with the things the protagonist deals with. Even though it's a fiction novel, like, a lot of people have a problem with that. They're like, well, if you didn't experience it yourself, or this wasn't your life, then why'd you write about it? Well, it's the life about a lot of people. Unfortunately, this crap still happens. I mean, the character deals with some pretty heavy stuff, and you can't deny that it takes place in our community more than we'd like to admit. And if I can speak to that, if I can play even like a minuscule role in maybe deterring someone from doing the stuff that happens to the character, then heck yeah, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write about it. And even if it's not my story, it's someone's story. And that's what writing's all about. It's about inspiration, it's about unity, strength. And, I think my favorite thing throughout this entire experience has been that people who work in chapters in Indigo and Coles, they told me that there's people walking in there asking for the book who really don't seem like the kind of people that would otherwise walk into a bookstore and read a book. And so many people actually messaged me themselves and said, this is the first book I've read since The Outsiders, or whatever book that they were required to read, right? Leisure reading has really kind of taken a downfall for some reason, especially amongst Indo-Canadian youth. But I'm glad to contribute to at least people having interest in doing something other than watching Netflix. I mean, I know it seems like reading is boring and all that, and it takes effort, and it's a lot more work than just watching like countless hours of Prison Break, which I myself am guilty of right now because I never watched that show when it was popular. But anyways, reading is so much more beneficial to you than just passively receiving like images off of a screen or your phone or iPad or whatever. It it awakens your mind in a way that movies and TV just don't. Because you're perceiving things in your own way. Everybody takes the book a little bit differently. So that's been my favorite part, is just bringing reading back on the map. I can't say that I've done that in like a global way or anything, but just locally, that's good enough for me. I'm happy to make a difference just in my community. But yeah, if any of you have read the book and you haven't reached out to me yet, feel free to send me an email at emrita_lit@hotmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And let me know what you think about this so far. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be received. I'm one of those people who really needs to hear positive feedback and encouragement in order to keep going with a project. So as soon as someone says something negative, unfortunately, I usually like shy away from it. It's just don't pursue it anymore. But hopefully this doesn't become one of those things and this isn't the last you hear from me. But yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about this time around, is just who I am, what the book is, what the driving force behind it is, and what I hope all of you take away from it. And that's to not only receive the message of the content of the book, but also just to feel like you too can be an author if that's your prerogative, or you too can be a YouTube star if that's what you want to do, or anything, whatever it may be, whatever that little idea that you get when you're just about to fall asleep at night that you think like, nah, that's unachievable. Like, anything can happen. Trust me, I am no different than you. Yeah, I've always had an interest in reading and writing, and yeah, like it is a strength of mine. But at the same time, I would have never got that copy of the book in my hands and those words on those pages if it wasn't through pure sheer effort and believing in myself. If I didn't take myself seriously as a writer first, no one else would have. So I think first you just need to realize that everybody, they're their own worst demon, and that voice in your head, sometimes it can be a good thing and sometimes it can be a very bad thing. So just tell it to shut up and go ahead with whatever you want to do. So that's my little inspirational spiel for the day. Let me know what else you want to know about me or the book, or what else you'd like to hear my opinion on. Like I said, I tend to have pretty strong opinions on things that not a lot of people agree with sometimes. But that's just who I am. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with you all and hearing your feedback. And yeah, that's it for today. So I'll talk to you guys next time, and take care. Have a wonderful week. I'm hoping to put these up at least once a week, but I don't want to commit to anything because, like I said, I have a 2-year-old and he runs my life, and that's pretty much how things go. Whatever he dictates, that's pretty much my life. But I'm going to try, if not once a week, at least twice a week. And thank you to everyone who's given me support and guidance throughout all of this. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the podcast, The Surrey Experience, but he's been kind of the one who really rooted for me to go ahead and pursue this project and not just keep diddly daddling about it and actually record something and put it out there. So let's see how it goes.